Hi, it's Titi here for My Sacred Blood. Welcome and welcome back to the only channel on YouTube that focuses exclusively on truly holistic menstrual care. If you haven't already done it, please do go ahead and subscribe. And if you're watching this from the website, consider joining the mailing list by filling out the form below. And since this is also the best kept secret on YouTube, please do go ahead and share this video with at least one person who you feel will benefit from the content. In this video, I'm going to be sharing what I believe to be the top 5 blood rituals and sacrifices that are inspired by menstrual blood. But as a disclaimer, I do have to say that there is no hard data that proves that these rituals, sacrifices, and ceremonies are actually based on menstrual blood. But that's for many reasons, including mainly the fact that menstruation has been all but written out of history and or replaced with these such rituals. But there's a lot of proof and obvious clues that tell us that these are indeed inspired by menstruation. One obvious clue is that all man-made inventions are based on or inspired by nature. And since menstruation is the only natural blood purification process, it is pretty obvious that any purification process or sacrifice that involves blood is obviously going to be inspired by the original. The second clue is the fact that the word ritual itself is a Sanskrit word meaning menstruation or to menstruate. And as I had mentioned in a previous video, the word blessing means to hallow or to make holy or whole with blood. And finally, the word sacrifice has a similar meaning, which is to make an offering of either flesh or blood in order to make holy or to sanctify. Although man may never actually acknowledge, especially not in writing, that all of the blood rituals, sacrifices, and ceremonies, traditions, and religions that we practice to this day are based on or inspired by menstrual blood, it is clear in the language that we speak that it is related to this one original blood ritual. So counting down from 5, let's start with bloodletting. Bloodletting involves draining what was believed to be excess or impure blood from a patient as a method for either treating or curing disease. The practice dates back several millennia to at least ancient Egypt. It was later adapted by Romans and soon became a standard medical treatment or cure across Europe during the Middle Ages, where practitioners used a sharp instrument to pierce the vein either at the elbow or in some cases to perform multiple incisions around the skull. Bloodletting was used as a treatment or prevention for many diseases, including anything from headaches, arthritis, gangrene, or gout, aka King's disease, to things like pneumonia and even plague. Some modern forms of bloodletting include cupping, phlebotomy, arteriotomy, blood, plasma, and marrow donation, dialysis, and even organ and tissue transplants, where impure or unclean blood is drained and replaced with clean blood, or where a donor sacrifices an organ or tissue to give life to another. Body modification, which was originally a form of ritualistic bloodletting, is now one of the most commonly practiced blood rituals across almost all cultures. It's a well-documented fact that ancient Mayans tattooed images to their bodies or pierced their flesh as a form of sacrifice to their many gods. Among the Bangada people of Eastern Africa, it was believed that a woman who did not menstruate could be a danger to her husband in battle. So before he went to war, he would cut her flesh slightly with his spear, because if she did not bleed in one way or another before he went to war, then he would be bled in battle. The scars or markings left on a woman's body would have been a form of body modification that stood as proof of her blood sacrifice. Circumcision, whether it be female or male genital mutilation, is a form of body modification whose ritualistic origins are still unknown. The earliest evidence of circumcision comes from ancient Egypt, Although there is evidence to suggest that genital mutilation has prehistoric roots in Eastern Africa. In the biblical covenant between God and Abram, the God promised Abram that he would have many descendants. In exchange for this legacy, the man who would later become known as Abraham would have to pass down the rite of circumcision to all his male descendants. In this way, circumcision has become a religious and/or ethnic ritual used to identify the descendants of the Abrahamic tribes. Because the removal of the prepuce or the foreskin reduces penile sensitivity, it was believed that male circumcision was traditionally performed as a religious ritualistic sacrifice of sinful human enjoyment in this early life for the sake of holiness in the afterlife. Although male circumcision is largely accepted in the mainstream, female circumcision has been rightfully classified as a barbaric form of genital mutilation and even torture. Although offering a portion of human flesh in return for godly favor can technically be viewed as a lesser form of human sacrifice, actual full-body human and animal sacrifice was, and in some places still is, a widely practiced blood ritual that was performed for both religious and social reasons. Human sacrifice was practiced amongst many cultures over the centuries, including among the ancient Sumerians, the Inca, Maya, Aztecs, the Shang dynasty of China, as well as countless European tribes. According to some, human sacrifice was used as a psychological tool as a way for the social elite to maintain control over the masses. For others, it was seen as an offering to their god or gods. For example, one story of human sacrifice can be found in Genesis 22 in the narrative known as the Binding of Isaac. Christians today still celebrate the human sacrifice of Jesus the Christ, who they openly accept as their Savior for having given his own life for their sins. And finally, number 1 is ingesting flesh and or blood. From the mythological fallen angels known as the Anunnaki, who some also associate with the Nephilim of the Bible, who were said to have consumed the menstrual blood and pineal gland of the goddess, to the Romans who drank the blood of dead gladiators, the ingestion of flesh and blood was not only a common practice, but has become the basis for religious rites that are still practiced today. During the Eucharist or Holy Communion, Christians take part in a ceremony that involves ingesting a thin wafer that represents the blood of the Christ, and red wine or grape juice to represent Christ's blood. Things like vampirism, placentophagy, and even the innocent partaking in a glass of sangria, meaning bleeding, are acceptable and mainstream forms of blood drinking rituals. What's interesting to note is that while the natural monthly sacrifice of blood from the womb was dreaded, deemed unclean, and in many cases even the mere mention of it was made taboo among all cultural groups, the ritualistic shedding and drinking of blood was not only acceptable, but in many cases it also became a necessity, an obligation that formed the basis of many religion and religious practices. The blatant hypocrisy of it all would be hilarious if it wasn't already so tragic and cruel. So I do hope that helps, or at the very least it was informing. I would like to hear your opinion on this one. So if you do practice a religion that involves one of these blood rituals and or sacrifices or ceremonies that include such blood rituals and sacrifices, let me know about it. And also let me know, what does your religion or your culture, or how does your religion or culture view menstruation and menstrual blood? Is it taboo? Is it stigmatized in your culture? Anyway, that is it for this one. Remember, I am here every moon day at noon, and that's Eastern time. So until the next one, Take care of yourself.